Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.
Hello again. Welcome to the Pronunciation Pro podcast. I'm Annie Rudin, and I am here to teach you all things about English pronunciation, how to be clearly understood when you're speaking English, and to be confident in American English and speaking American English, and to build connection with people as you're communicating in English. So this is the platform that we're using. I'm actually doing something a little bit new. Today is I have the podcast, and I'm usually just speaking into a microphone, but today I'm actually recording myself, doing a video recording of myself as I do this podcast, because we want to be able to use the video and connect face to face in some of our social media accounts. So if you're not already following us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, definitely go check us out. And if you are on YouTube and watching this right now, welcome. Glad to have you here. We also have a podcast, so you can take me on the go. These podcasts are a better fit for what we're trying to teach and accomplish here at Pronunciation Pro, because we want to expose you to as much of American English as possible. We want to give you as much to listen to as possible so that you can train your ear, you can bring awareness to your spoken English as you're listening and as we're highlighting certain topics. So we'll have topics about clarity, about confidence, and about connection on this podcast. And so today I'm actually using this video as well because I want to show some slides. Now, if you're listening on the podcast and it's just audio only, that will be enough. But if you're more of a visual learner and you want to kind of have that visual, either face-to-face connection or the visual of the slides, I recommend going over to YouTube and checking out these videos there. Okay. Well, today our topic is the 4 secrets of a super communicator in English. Okay, the 4 secrets. So we're going to dive into the content from a book that we recently reviewed in Pronunciation Pro called SUPERCOMMUNICATOR, and it's by Charles Duhigg. Now, in Pronunciation Pro, we have this book club that we meet every other month, and we choose a book and we all read it separately, and then we come back and we discuss it. And it's a great opportunity to practice English. It's a great opportunity to just create that connection within our community. And it's in those shared topics that we're really able to connect on a deeper way. So it makes sense that we would have this format as we were practicing our communication skills, right? So I encourage you, if you're not a member of Pronunciation Pro, come join us. Come join our book club meetings. Come join the discussion, as well as the many, many other things that we're doing there at Pronunciation Pro. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the 4 secrets of super communicators. And this is geared toward you if you are a non-native English speaker. So you might speak multiple languages, but English is not your mother tongue or your primary language. And so what we're trying to do is help you build the skills that you need to be clearly understood, to be able to feel confident in American English, and to get that connection that is so critical when it comes to communication. Because why do we communicate except for connection? We are wanting to share information. We want to connect with other people. And it's in that connection that we really experience success as you're speaking English. Okay. We want you to be successful. We want you to make those connections with people and to have that connection of them seeing you and you seeing them. That's really what we're talking about here. Okay. So let's dive in here. I'm going to share my slides here. Okay, so this presentation or this discussion that we had happened a little while ago, July 25th. And so now I'm going to kind of bring that topic to you, help share some of the tools that we talked about and we discussed together in our book club meeting about Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg. Okay, so to start it off, I'm gonna read some quotes from this book, Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg. And essentially, Charles Duhigg is really working on, he is teaching us what the best communicators are doing. Why is it that when we, have something to share with someone, there's certain people that we will go to, and what makes them great at communicating. and maybe you've asked yourself, I think this has been a topic for me for many, many years, of watching super communicators and trying to figure out what they're doing. Why are they so effective in their communication skills, and how can I match those communication skills? Okay, it's more than just saying the right sounds in American English. It's more than just having the right intonation. There are deeper level communication skills that are at work. And I want all of you to have those skills. So what I've done is kind of broken it down to what I feel like is some of the key elements of what Charles Duhigg is talking about when it comes to being a super communicator. Okay. So let's start with this quote. The most effective communicators pause before they speak and ask themselves, why am I opening my mouth? Unless we know what kind of discussion we're hoping for and what kind of discussion our companions want, we are at a disadvantage. Okay. So I have underlined this word pause. Okay. Because that really is the first secret of a super communicator. We want to pause and ask ourselves, what kind of conversation are we having? Okay, super communicators are really clear about what kind of conversation they're having. And Charles Duhigg really points this out of like, we really need to identify what kind of conversation we're having. So he breaks it down, and there's 3 different types of conversations that are being had at any time. And it's not like they're in these great separate containers, like we're only using one at a time. They do weave and mix, but this is what we need to identify. Oh, and before I get into that, this idea of pausing, okay, this is something that we talk a lot about at Pronunciation Pro, is that there is a pause that needs to happen between our stimulus and our response. Okay, so someone starts talking, and we need to pause for just a minute and choose our response. Okay, so between stimulus, so this is a quote by Viktor Frankl that we use all the time in the Pronunciation Pro program. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Okay, stimulus and response. Okay, our response to that question. Someone asks us a question and tries to engage in conversation with us. And there's a stimulus and a response, okay? What are we going to choose as our response? So as we pause during that space where we have our power to choose our response, that's where our growth and our freedom is taking place. So when we pause and we identify what kind of conversation are we having here, that's where we're exercising that power to choose. Okay? That's our growth and our freedom. All right, so another quote from Charles Duhigg is talking about these 3 types of conversations, okay? So he says, the first one is that many discussions are actually 3 different conversations. There are practical decision-making conversations that focus on what's this really about, okay? There are emotional conversations which ask, how do we feel? And there are social conversations that explore, who are we? We are often moving in and out of all 3 conversations as a dialogue unfolds. However, if we aren't having the same kind of conversation as our partners at the same time, we're unlikely to connect with each other. Okay. So these three types of conversations, there's practical decision-making conversations, there's emotional conversations, and there's social conversations. All right. So let's kind of talk about what those three are. So if we kind of go back to the practical decision-making conversation, where are we going for dinner? Okay. When is the meeting going to happen? So we're just relaying information. It's just the facts. Okay. What's this really about? What are we really talking about? Okay. Just let's make a decision. And this is a practical conversation. There are emotional conversations. Okay. How are we feeling about this? So being able to identify, is someone just relaying information, or are they communicating how they feel about something? Okay. Those emotional conversations, we have to understand they're emotional. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then there are social conversations. Who are we? Okay. Those social conversations are talking about like our values, our experiences, the way we think about things. Okay. These are social conversations, and we're going to be moving throughout. So the first step is, first step as secret communicator is to pause and identify what kind of conversation we're having. The second secret of a super communicator, the second secret of a super communicator is to match. Okay, we're going to match what kind of conversation we're having. So if we're having an emotional conversation, if your conversational partner is having an emotional conversation, we're going to match it with emotion. Okay, so if they're coming at us saying, I had a really rough weekend. Oh yeah, it's not like, we're going to match that with, well, it's time to get over that and come to the meeting on time. Okay, we're not going to kind of match it with logistics. If they say, I had a really emotional weekend, then we're going to match that emotion. Oh yeah, how did that feel? Or what did that feel like? Or tell me more about that. Okay, we match it with emotion, we match it with compassion, with understanding. We're going to connect on that emotional level. Okay, if someone is coming to us and they're saying, we need to go, we need to get to the meeting on time today, this is really important for the boss to, that we're on time. It's like, okay, great, what time is the meeting? What are the expectations? That's a logical, you're matching logical with logical. And then social, it's like, I'm not sure I really agree with what's happening, or what our boss is recommending for us to do. Like, this is getting into some values that I have around this. So there's more of that social conversation. Oh yeah, what values are those? What are you specifically concerned about? Okay. So matching the conversation. Okay, this is one of those things that as a non-native English speaker, we're just going to bring your attention to, hey, there are different kinds of conversations, and can you identify what kind of conversations are happening? So I know you're doing an incredible amount of listening and trying to kind of clue into conversations, okay? And, as a non-native English speaker, I know it's difficult to be able to engage in those conversations. So actually, I have a client that I was working with this last week named Jing, and she was saying, I don't know exactly how to engage in the conversations very well. I'm really struggling to kind of get into deeper conversations. And maybe you're the same, as that, the casual conversation, the superficial level conversations are pretty easy, but how do you get into like a real conversation, or how do you keep a conversation going after that initial, oh, what'd you do this weekend? I did this. Oh, what'd you do this weekend? I did this. And then it just kind of fizzles out from there. Okay. If you're kind of curious, okay, how do I really engage in the conversation? Then these are the first steps. We need to understand what kind of conversation we're having and match it. Okay. So emotion to emotion, logic to logic, social to social. And it might weave through several of these things. So you kind of have to be, on alert of like, where are we going with this conversation and how can I stay with you where you're going? Okay. And just along with the matching, a quote here that says, effective communication requires recognizing what kind of conversation is occurring and then matching each other. On a very basic level, if someone seems emotional, allow yourself to become emotional as well. So just a side note, this isn't like if someone's angry, get angry with them. It's like, oh, I can see you're angry. That like, tell me more about that anger, or just like, yeah, that would make me mad too. Okay. Kind of match that emotion, but you don't want to like then get into a full on argument because you're matching their their anger. Okay. If someone is intent on decision making, match that focus. If they are preoccupied by social implications, reflect their fixation back to them. All right. So that's the first steps. As I was coaching Jing, I was like, first we need to understand what is the conversation, what is it that is happening in the conversation? What kind of conversation are we having? And can we identify it enough to match that? Okay. So again, we're going to pause, we're going to match. And so the third step, and this is something that we really got into in my coaching session with Jing, is we're going to ask deep questions. This is a big topic in super communicators. And there's another book called Ask Powerful Questions. And let me identify again the author of it. I'm just looking in my Audible account. So Ask Powerful Questions is by Will Wise. Will Wise, Will, and then last name Wise, Wise. Okay. So asking powerful questions, asking deeper questions is where we create the most connection. That is the secret to keeping a conversation going. Okay. So if someone is asking, hey, how was your weekend? And you give the facts of your weekend, that's good. But if you want the conversation to go longer, there's the facts about it. Oh, I went to a birthday party for my niece. Okay. And it's really fun because I have, had a close relationship with my niece. She's so special to me. And this is how I feel about her. And here's what she is like and how I feel about her. And family is so important to me because that is, that's such a core value of mine is to have close relationships with family. Okay. Do you see how that took the conversation to a deeper level? It became less about the fact that I went to my niece's birthday party to, I really love my niece. I have deep connection with her. Family is important to me. Okay. Now it provides an opportunity for your conversational partner to follow along with you and kind of go that direction of sharing something about themselves or asking more questions from you. Or you can ask a question of them do you have a close relationship with your family? Okay. That is a deeper question, right? Instead of just, what did you do this weekend? It was, and they answer, oh, I went to my, niece's birthday party. It's like, oh, what's your relationship like with your family? Okay. That invites the person to go to a deeper level with you in the conversation. So asking these deeper questions, they focus more on feelings, values, and experiences. Okay. So let me kind of add a few points that, were shared by Charles Duhigg. He says, a deep question asks about someone's values, beliefs, judgments, or experiences, rather than just facts. So don't ask, where do you work? Instead, draw out feelings or experiences. What's the best part of your job? Okay. And it says, one 2021 study found a simple approach to generating deep questions. Before speaking, imagine you're talking to a close friend. What questions would you ask? Okay. Then number 2, a deep question asks people to talk about how they feel. Sometimes this is easy. How do you feel about your family, right? Or we can prompt people to describe specific emotions. Did it make you happy when you attended your niece's birthday party? Or ask someone to analyze a situation's emotions. Why do you think he got angry? Or why do you think you have a close relationship with your niece? Okay? Or emphasize, how would you feel if that happened to you? So, why do you have that why do you think you have that close relationship with your niece? Or how would you feel if you didn't have that relationship in your life? Okay? It just takes it to a deeper emotional level. All right? Number 3, asking a deep question should feel like sharing. It should feel a bit like we're revealing something about ourselves when we ask a deep question. This feeling might give us pause, but studies show people are nearly always happy to have been asked and to answer a deep question. So sometimes we're thinking, oh, well, this is like too much, or I'm getting too, like, I'm asking too much, or I'm asking them to share too much. But the studies show that people love sharing. They love talking about themselves. And even though it might be kind of shocking because not very many people go to those deeper questions, it will create a deeper level of connection when you're willing to ask those deeper kind of sharing questions. Charles Duhigg says, hearing people describe their emotional lives is important because when we talk about our feelings, we're describing not just what has happened to us, but why we made certain choices and how we make sense of the world. Okay, so it's really helping understand them as a person. Now, this isn't something that's just going to happen really easily. I feel like, it's a practice. It's something to, just first start getting aware of what kind of conversations are happening. And then have a list of like deeper questions that you can ask your coworkers or ask your family members. Have an idea of like, okay, I want to ask more about feelings, experiences, and just kind of have them share a little bit more. So what was that like for you? Or how did that feel for you? Okay. Have those kind of in your back pocket so that you can have them ready to ask when you get into these conversational experiences. Okay. So ask deep questions is number 3. So pause, match the conversation, and ask deep questions based on feelings, values, and experiences. And then the fourth secret of a super communicator is to listen. So Charles Duhigg, he talks about looping for understanding, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute, and ask for clarity as needed. So as I was coaching Jing this week, we talked about asking deep questions, and then I talked about, what, non-native English speakers are actually the best listeners I've ever come across because you've had such experience in having to listen so closely for understanding and really try to figure out, okay, am I understanding exactly what they're saying? And if not, I need to ask for clarification. So that is a really important piece is, you might not understand all the context of what someone's saying or some of the vocabulary. So we want to make sure that we're looping for understanding, we're asking for clarity, and so that the person that we're communicating with really can feel like we're wanting that connection and wanting to understand them, but also that we actually are understanding, right? You might not understand all the things, but if you're willing to ask for clarification and you're able to loop for understanding, that is a powerful, powerful tool of a super communicator. Charles Duhigg says, I learned that if you listen for someone's truth and you put your truth next to it, you might reach them. Okay, so this is part of listening for someone's truth. What are they really trying to tell you? And let's put our truth next to it, just like, oh, I know how you feel, or I know how that is. This was my experience too. There's a connection there. Okay, so on the topic of listening, okay, this is about that looping skill set. If we want to show someone we're paying attention, we need to prove once that person has stopped speaking that we have absorbed what they said. And the best way to do that is by repeating in our own words what we just heard them say, and then asking if we got it right. It's a fairly simple technique. Prove you're listening by asking the speaker questions, reflecting back what you just heard, and then seeking confirmation that you understand. But studies show it is the single most effective technique for proving to someone that we want to hear them. It's a formula sometimes called looping for understanding. Okay, so someone's telling us something, they stop speaking, and then it's, so you're saying this, and you kind of reword it, repeat it in your own words. So you're saying that you really, this was a great experience because of your relationship with your niece. Tell me more about that relationship. Okay, so, or if it's a concept that you're like, okay, I really need to understand this clearly, and I'm not sure I understand. Help me. Is this what you're trying to say? And it's like, yes, that's what I'm saying. Okay, then we have that confirmation that we're on the right track. We're saying the right thing, the same thing. And the goal here really is connection. Okay, we're wanting to connect in that deeper way. So Charles Duhigg says, to communicate with someone, we must connect with them. When we absorb what someone is saying and they comprehend what we say, it's because our brains have to some degree aligned. Okay, so I love this idea of connection through communication. When we absorb what they're saying and they understand what we're saying, there is connection. There's actual vibrations that are happening that are in sync. So Charles Duhigg talks about in the Supercommunicator book, he gives this great example of these musicians. So I'm going to read about these musicians. He says, numerous other researchers have also been fascinated by how we form connections. As Sievers began reading science journals, he learned that in 2012, scholars at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Germany had studied the brains of guitarists playing Schindler's Sonata in D major. When the musicians played their guitars separately, with each person focused on their own musical score, their neural activity looked dissimilar. So if they were playing the guitar separately, their neural patterns, their brain activity didn't look the same. So they were dissimilar. They were not the same. But when they segued into a duet, so they're playing different parts and then they segue into a duet, they go into a duet, the electrical pulses within their brains began to synchronize. Okay, so the brain activities started to synchronize. They started to become the same. To the researchers, it appeared as if the guitarists' minds had merged. What's more, that linkage often flowed through their bodies. They frequently began breathing at similar rates. Their eyes dilated in tandem, meaning it the same. Their hearts began to beat in similar patterns. Frequently, even the electrical impulses along their skin would synchronize. Okay, so they got in sync. There was a connection. There was actually frequencies, and there was this body-to-body connection when they were doing these duets. They were playing the guitar together. Okay, and then it says, then when they stopped playing together, as their scores diverged, or they veered into solos, the between brain synchronization disappeared completely. Okay, so then they started kind of getting asynchronous, or they started having their own individual patterns again. I found this fascinating because I feel like this happens so often in conversation, where if we're not kind of on the same page or understanding and being understood very clearly, there's this asynchronous, frequency happening where we're not really connecting with each other. Okay. And then you can contrast that with a really great conversation where there's a ton of connection, where you're like, I'm understanding you, you're understanding me. We both are actively working on communicating and understanding each other. And there's this connection that happens there that's unlike anything else. Okay, so that is what I'm talking about as far as connection goes. And that's how it's created, is when someone is understanding us, we're understanding them, we're able to create that stronger connection. And it literally is a frequency in our bodies that connects with each other. And, I know that in your native language, you probably have this experience so often that you're in your native language, you feel that connection, you feel that vibration is synced up. Okay. And then it's really, really hard to get into that when you're speaking English, because there are some of these barriers that are preventing that connection. So what we're really wanting you to do, and really working with you at Pronunciation Pro, is can we get the sounds and the rhythms of American English to flow really easily so that it's easy for your listener to understand you, and that you can understand them? Because when you understand why they're speaking the way they do, and we can really kind of help you get that understanding, then that connection can really be made. And I love that connection. It's so great. To communicate with someone, we must connect with them. Okay. So even just listening to this podcast, listening to me talk about this, if you're really understanding these concepts, you'll feel a connection to it. You'll feel like, oh yes, I totally understand that. I'm getting it. You're going to feel this connection and this closeness, honestly, to me and these concepts. And that is the design of communication. When communication is clearly understood and clearly communicated, clearly understood, that's when we create that connection. All right, so just to review, 4 secrets of a super communicator. Number 1, pause. What kind of conversation are we having? Number 2, match the kind of conversation you're having. Is it emotional? Is it logical? Is it social? Okay, and then ask the deeper questions. Get down to the feelings, the values, and experiences of people. I promise you, people want to connect in that way. And it will be a blessing to them and to you to connect in that deeper way. And then listen, really listen, loop for understanding, ask for clarification. If you're not understanding, don't pretend like you're not understanding. Okay, that creates disconnection. Because if you're not understanding, you can't understand, you can't create that connection. Okay, so loop for understanding, ask for clarification. All right. Okay, I know this is going to be huge for you. As you practice these secrets of a super communicator, I know that it will make a huge difference for you in that connection in English. We want to remove those barriers. And when you understand these skills of a super communicator, it really will help break down those barriers and allow for more connection. And you will feel that sense of satisfaction in your conversations that you're missing maybe now in English. And I want you to go practice it and let me know how it goes, and we will see you again soon. All right, thanks.
Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.